Welcome to Maverick's Code, where conversations dive deep into the provocative, the fancy, the quirky, and capricious. Today's new release of Season 1, Episode 2, freshly crafted for you. Our new topic, Wear Your Voice, the Political Power of Fashion, where we look back into the intersection of fashion and politics, featuring your host and author, Captain JR, with our speakers, Joanna and Robert. Buckle in as we dive deep into the minds of today's Mavericks.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into something that I think is super fascinating. The intersection of fashion and politics.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And we've got some great sources lined up, articles, historical accounts, designer quotes, all that good stuff. And, the real question we're going to try and answer is, how has clothing been used as a tool for making political statements, for activism, for resistance?
Yeah, and throughout history.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on for quite a while.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, think about it like what we choose to wear. It's like a statement to the world, right? It's like, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. And I think some people just kind of take it for granted, what they put on every day. But some people really use fashion as a weapon.
A weapon.
To fight the power. Like Katherine Hamnett, for example. Back in the 80s, she had those slogan T-shirts.
Oh, yeah. She was bold. She was so ahead of her time.
She was. Choose life. Use a condom. And she even wore one to meet Margaret Thatcher that said, 58% are opposed to Pershing. Wow.
It's such a powerful way to get your message across, right? It's like, instead of just shouting a slogan in a crowd, you're literally wearing your beliefs on your sleeve. Or, your chest in this case.
Yeah. And you can't ignore it.
Right. Exactly. And think about the impact of wearing something like that to meet a powerful figure like Thatcher. It forces people to confront an issue head on. It sparks curiosity. It challenges authority. It's brilliant.
Right. It's making people think, wait, 58% are opposed to what? Tell me more.
Exactly.
And then there's PETA. Right. PETA's another great example.
Oh, yeah. We'd rather go naked than wear fur.
Exactly. I mean, it was super controversial, but you can't deny that it was effective. And, it's interesting because their approach changed over time. They went from really aggressive tactics to kind of this more seductive almost imagery, using supermodels like Naomi Campbell.
Yeah, it was like they would say, hey, being ethical can be sexy too. You can be compassionate and stylish at the same time.
Right. So it's not just about guilt-tripping people into doing the right thing. It's about making ethical fashion choices, aspirational.
It's smart.
It is.
It really is.
Okay, so we've got bold slogans, we've got thought-provoking imagery, but let's talk about real fashion rebellion. Vivienne Westwood.
Oh, the queen of punk.
Yeah.
She was a true iconoclast, always pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo.
Yes. And her quote, I love this quote. She said she wanted to, quote, destroy the word conformity, end quote, with her creations.
And she did. I mean, think about her Mini Crinny collection back in 1985.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a playful rebellion against the, very serious futuristic looks that were popular at the time. She brought back crinolines, but they were short, and she paired them with exposed lingerie.
It was like, hey, fashion, lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And a big middle finger to the establishment.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of middle fingers to the establishment, she didn't just stop at the runway, right?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
This woman drove a tank to protest fracking.
A tank? And then she locked herself in a bird cage to advocate for Julian Assange. That's commitment.
It really is. And it shows that for her, fashion wasn't just about aesthetics. It was deeply intertwined with her political beliefs and her activism.
Absolutely. It was a platform for her to speak her mind and fight for the causes she believed in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about some pretty modern examples, but this whole thing, this connection between fashion and politics, it goes way back.
Oh, absolutely. Centuries even.
Think about 18th century Philadelphia, right?
Oh, yeah. The birthplace of America.
Yeah. And during the fight for independence, fashion became a real battleground.
A battleground.
It was. You had the Tories, the folks who were loyal to the crown. They were all about flaunting their wealth, wearing these super fancy European styles.
Yeah, it was a way for them to show their allegiance to the crown and to kind of reinforce the existing power structures. We're the elite and we're here to stay.
Right. But then you had the Whigs, the ones pushing for independence, and they saw those fancy clothes as a symbol of dependence on Britain. They were like, no, we need to be our own people with our own style.
And it wasn't just about style. Right. It was about economics, too.
Right.
The Whigs started pushing for American-made clothing as a way to boycott British goods.
So it was like a patriotic duty to ditch the fancy imported stuff and support local businesses.
Exactly. Fashion became a tool for economic resistance.
Wow. So you can see how, like, something as simple as what you choose to wear can actually become this really powerful statement.
Right. And it's a reminder that fashion isn't just about looking good. It's about identity. It's about values. It's about power dynamics.
It's about making a statement, even if you don't realize you're doing it.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's hop across the pond. 18th century England.
Ah, good old England. Land of tea and crumpets.
Right. But also land of high taxes and political unrest. And right in the middle of all that, you have women finding these really creative ways to express their political views through, you guessed it, fashion.
And they couldn't vote, they couldn't hold office, so they had to find other ways to make their voices heard.
Exactly. And one of the coolest examples, I think, is the excise fan.
Yeah, the excise fan. It was like this secret weapon of political commentary.
Yeah, no. Instead of just like writing down their grievances, they used these beautiful fans with all this intricate imagery and symbolism to spread their message against the excise bill, this unpopular tax law.
And these fans were specifically targeted at women. You know, the British fair. They would carry them to social gatherings, to the theater, even to political rallies.
So it was like this subtle, subversive way to spread dissent and encourage women to get involved in the political process. Like, hey, ladies, we may not be able to vote, but we can sure make a statement with our fans.
Exactly. And it wasn't just fans. Women also used handkerchiefs. They would wave them at political events to show their support for certain candidates or causes.
Oh, yeah. It was like a silent cheer, a way to show solidarity without actually saying a word.
Exactly. So even in a society where women were largely excluded from formal politics, they found ways to make their presence felt and their voices heard.
And they did it all through fashion. Pretty
Yeah.
incredible, right?
Absolutely incredible.
Okay, now let's fast forward a bit. We're going to jump to the Algerian War of Independence, a really pivotal moment in history where, you guessed it, fashion played a surprisingly significant role.
This is where we see the hijab, a garment often associated with modesty and religious observance, taking on this whole new layer of meaning. It became a symbol of resistance against French colonial rule.
Wow. So it's like this garment that's traditionally seen as being about like covering up and conforming to societal expectations becomes this powerful symbol of defiance and cultural identity.
Exactly. It was a way for Algerian women to reclaim their bodies, their culture, and their identity in the face of oppression.
But here's the thing, right? The French, they didn't see it that way. They interpreted the hijab as a symbol of oppression that needed to be eradicated.
Right. It's a classic example of how cultural misunderstandings and biases can influence how we perceive clothing and the people who wear it.
It's a reminder that fashion doesn't exist in a vacuum, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
It's always intertwined with culture, with history, with power dynamics, and what one person sees as a symbol of oppression, another person might see as a symbol of liberation.
Exactly. It all depends on your perspective and your understanding of the context.
Okay, so we've talked about how clothing can be used to make a statement, to rebel, to challenge authority. But now I want to talk about how fashion has been used to challenge gender norms. We're going to dive into the world of feminist fashion.
Okay, let's do it. Feminist fashion. It's not just about like a particular style, right? It's about challenging all those expectations, all those norms that have dictated what women should wear for centuries.
Yeah, it's like pushing back against all that pressure, you
Yeah.
know, to conform to this narrow idea of what it means to be feminine.
Totally. Like, think about the early 20th century. Women were literally squeezed into corsets, weighed down by these heavy skirts.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
It was like their clothing was designed to restrict their movements, to keep them in their place, literally and figuratively.
And then, you know, you get these women who are like, nope, not having it, and they start wearing bloomers.
Bloomers, those loose-fitting pants worn under dresses.
Such a simple change, but so radical for the time.
It was about comfort, about mobility, about reclaiming their bodies.
Yeah, like, I'm going to wear pants because I want to and because I can.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have Coco Chanel, who just revolutionized everything.
Oh, Coco Chanel, legend.
Her designs were all about simplicity, elegance, and this kind of androgynous look that really challenged the hyper-feminine styles of the time.
Yeah, her suits were like a power move. Like, I'm a woman, and I can be just as strong and stylish as any man.
Absolutely. She gave women a new way to express themselves, a way that was both feminine and powerful.
And then, boom, the miniskirt hits the scene in the 60s.
Talk about a fashion revolution.
I know. It was like the symbol of youthful rebellion, this rejection of all those old-fashioned ideas about modesty and decorum.
And it was controversial, of course, but that's what made it so powerful.
Right. It forced people to confront their own ideas about women's bodies and sexuality.
Exactly. It was like this visual representation of women's liberation. Like, we're not going to be told what to wear anymore. We're going to make our own choices.
And that idea, that spirit of liberation and self-expression, it's still alive and well today.
Oh, yeah. Look at the body positivity movement, the push for inclusivity in fashion. It's all about challenging those narrow beauty standards and celebrating diversity.
It's about saying, hey, all bodies are beautiful and all bodies deserve to be represented in fashion.
Exactly. And that's what feminist fashion is all about.
Yeah.
Choice, agency, the freedom to define your own identity through clothing.
And you know, we've talked about the positive side of fashion, but there's a darker side too.
Yeah, we can't ignore that.
Like fast fashion.
The demand for cheap, trendy clothes has created this whole system that exploits workers and pollutes the environment. It's a real problem.
And I think the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh really brought that issue to light.
Over 1,000 garment workers lost their lives in that tragedy.
It was a wake-up call for the industry and for consumers. It made us realize that the clothes we wear often come at a very high human cost.
It's not just the human cost, right? It's the environmental cost, too. The fashion industry is a major polluter, from the toxic dyes used in fabrics to the mountains of clothing that end up in landfills.
It's a lot to think about, but it's important to be aware of these issues, you know? To think about where our clothes come from and who made them.
Absolutely. We need to move away from this culture of disposability and embrace more sustainable practices.
Support brands that are ethical, that treat their workers fairly, that are trying to minimize their environmental impact. It's about making conscious choices, even if it means spending a little more money or buying fewer items.
And there's some great documentaries and books out there that really delve into these issues, expose the hidden costs behind our insatiable appetite for new clothes.
Yeah, we'll definitely share some of those resources with our listeners. But for now, let's talk about another issue that's been getting a lot of attention lately: cultural appropriation in fashion.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. There's a fine line between appreciating and celebrating other cultures and exploiting them for profit.
Right. Like, remember the whole Kim Kardashian kimono controversy?
Yeah, that was a major misstep.
She tried to trademark a term that has deep cultural significance in Japanese culture, and people were not happy about it.
It was a classic example of how good intentions can go wrong when cultural sensitivity is lacking.
And it highlighted the importance of understanding the context, like what might seem like just a cool design element to one person can actually be a really sacred or meaningful symbol to another.
Absolutely. And it's not just about symbols, it's about acknowledging the creative contributions of marginalized communities. Like, remember when Isabel Marant copied a traditional blouse design from an indigenous community in Mexico?
Oh, yeah. And instead of demanding money, the community just wanted recognition.
They wanted their cultural heritage to be respected, not exploited.
Which is totally understandable. It's about valuing creativity and tradition over profit.
Exactly.
Okay, now I want to shift gears a bit and talk about how fashion can be a catalyst for dialogue, for social change.
Oh, yeah. Fashion has this amazing ability to capture the zeitgeist,
Yeah.
to reflect what's happening in society, to spark conversations about important issues.
Like, think about the Trayvon Martin case back in 2012. The hoodie became this powerful symbol of racial profiling and injustice.
And the Million Hoodie March was a powerful demonstration of how clothing could be used to unite people in a shared fight for justice.
It was like this visual statement of solidarity, like, we see you, we hear you, and we're standing with you.
Exactly. And then there was the tragic death of Eric Garner, and the phrase, "I can't breathe," appearing on T-shirts and posters everywhere. It was a powerful reminder of the ongoing struggle against police brutality.
And athletes, celebrities, activists, they were all wearing these shirts, spreading the message, keeping the conversation going.
It shows how fashion can amplify voices, bring attention to issues that might otherwise be ignored.
And sometimes, even seemingly unintentional fashion choices can become politically charged. Remember when Melania Trump wore that jacket? The one that said, "I really don't care, do you?"
Oh, yeah, that caused quite a stir.
People were debating the meaning, the intent, the message. It was like this Rorschach test of political interpretation.
It just goes to show that in our hyper-connected world, every fashion choice, especially those made by public figures, is subject to scrutiny and analysis.
And sometimes a jacket is more than just a jacket, right?
Right.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture, fashion in society, fashion in politics. But now I want to bring it back to our listeners, to their own personal experiences with fashion.
Yeah, that's a great point. At the end of the day, fashion is a personal form of expression.
It's about how we choose to present ourselves to the world, what messages we want to send, what values we want to reflect.
It's about finding that balance between personal style and, being mindful of the impact our choices have on the world.
Right, exactly. So, what can our listeners actually do to be more conscious consumers? What are some practical steps they can take?
Well, I think the first step is just to be more informed. Do your research, read articles, watch documentaries, follow ethical fashion bloggers. There are so many resources out there.
Yeah, knowledge is power, right? The more we know about the issues, the better equipped we are to make good decisions.
Totally. And once you're informed, you can start making those conscious choices, like support brands that align with your values, prioritize quality over quantity, and think about the life cycle of your clothes. Can you repair them? Can you donate them? Can you upcycle them?
Yeah, it's about moving away from that fast fashion mindset, where clothes are just disposable, and embracing a more sustainable approach. And, don't be afraid to use your voice.
Yeah, speak up.
Tell your friends, tell your family, call out brands that are doing things wrong, support organizations that are working to make the fashion industry more ethical and sustainable.
And remember, you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
Right. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from slogan tees to suffragettes, from Coco Chanel to the hijab.
We've seen how fashion can be used to make a statement, to challenge norms, to spark conversations, to fight for justice.
And we've learned that fashion isn't just about looking good. It's about making conscious choices that reflect our values and contribute to a better world.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners?
Think critically about your own relationship with fashion. Use your clothing choices to express yourself, to support causes you believe in, to make a positive impact on the world.
Don't underestimate the power of your choices. Even something as simple as what you choose to wear can make a difference.
So go out there, be stylish, be conscious, and be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching and listening. We hope you found your inner peace with our podcast. Keep yourself updated and join us on our next episode. Stay safe and healthy, and have a good day. See you soon.